minute late, 31 minutes if you count that I'm supposed to come on at 1 p.m. But 1 minute late from the booted back time. Seth coming in hot to save the midday. Pumped for more SP every time we can get it. LFG. I'm gonna pretend I don't know what that curse word acronym means. Will Anderson was on the Rich Eisen Show, and it was a fun, very fun interview because Rich got Will while Will was at his niece's birthday party. I can only imagine that Will Anderson is probably the best uncle who ever lived. Like, he's got the buck and bronco, he's got the claw down pat. I would love to have Will Anderson as an uncle. The first question I'm going to play about 5 or 6 clips from this interview with Rich Eisen. Were just simply, what were his goals for the offseason?
I haven't written down my goals yet. I kind of do it like right before training camp starts. But my goal in just one word is just to wreak havoc this year. That's it. Like, that's always been, like, if I had to tell anybody my goal, like, that's it. Like, I don't get into like my specific goals, but that's just my one like word to sum up all my goals.
Good strategy, not telling people your specific goals, because then they become annoying benchmarks for us scumbags in the media to follow along with. So that's a good choice as far as what he publicly divulges or not. I think as far as specific goals when it comes to sacks or anything like that, I get nervous. As you guys know, when receivers start talking about their yardage goals, I just get nervous because football is the ultimate team sport in terms of total numbers of guys on the roster that play on any given day. And there's so many other factors that go into whether you have a 20 sack season or not, that sometimes if you get too fixated on a specific number, that's when, whether it's conscious or not, you might have a tendency to forget your run responsibilities or what have you. I do like production goals. Like, there's a production ratio. One of my defensive line coaches, Todd Grantham, he used to have production ratio, which is like total number of sacks, tackles, assists, quarterback pressures, all those things divided by the number of plays you have. Because then it's just like, all right, whether it's a run or a pass or anything else, I'm just going to bust my ass and get around the ball as often as possible, which we know that Will is going to do. And so I like that he doesn't necessarily want to state a specific number. Rich Eisen, good interviewer that he is, in his very low-key way, he pressed for more. He pressed for details.
But you will at some point write down a number on a piece of paper for sacks?
Will do. Yes, sir.
Okay. Will you at least tell me what it was for last year? You got it for last year?
Last year was like 7 to 10. Like, I just wanted to get like somewhere right there. But like next year, I really want to get double-digit sacks.
Okay, so that's a vaguer goal, and it's interesting. There's historical data that supports his goal right there, which is I kind of was freaked out by how accurate I was this morning when I just threw it out there. Houston Texans makes a good point that sacks are kind of random and not necessarily indicative of good play. Clowney is someone who's produced at a good level but didn't have sacks. Right. It's a very nuanced thing, and we could spend a half hour doing this. The best pass rushers in the league typically get double-digit sacks pretty consistently. So in any given year, it's not the best gauge. You could have the best year ever as a pass rusher and only end up with 15 sacks instead of 22 or something like that. So yeah, there's a randomness to it, but Will addresses some of the nuances in another clip that's coming up soon. The thing that I found really interesting was, I threw this out here this morning to Sean Pendergast, was that you see this a lot with sack leaders, guys that become prodigious sack producers, that in their rookie year, it's rare that they have double-digit sacks. But I was freakishly correct. I went through the guys who have had the most sacks in the last 5 years. Myles Garrett, 7 sacks in his first year, 15 in his second. TJ Watt had 7 sacks his rookie year. Nick Bosa had 9. Danielle Hunter had 6. Trey Hendrickson had 6.5 in his first 3 seasons. The edge rushers, Hassan Reddick had 7 in his first 3 seasons. He's a different story. Khalil Mack had 4 in his first season, followed it up with 15. J.J. Watt famously had 5.5 sacks in his first season. He's not in the last 5 years, obviously, but and then 20.5 in his second season. So and a lot of those guys, ended up with 12 or 13. Max Crosby was the one exception. Max Crosby had 10 sacks in his rookie season, 7 in his second season. He regressed a little bit. So, I think that's the appropriate tack to take is, all right, look, that was a good number that Will put up last year, but he's got to build on that. He's got to produce more. He talks about it a lot. The next question Rich asked was, what has he learned from his rookie year? What did he learn his rookie year?
And sometimes, like when I watch film, I just be like, bro, what were you even thinking? Like, what are you even doing right here? And it's just been a great learning experience for me. And this whole offseason, all the things that I've seen in my tape, talk with my coaches and everything like that, those are the things I've been working on.
Well,
just finishing on the quarterback, and a lot of times just taking the edge instead of just like I would just stop at the top of my rush and not get extension at the top of my rush. So those are like some of the things that I've been like heavily working on this offseason and just working on my steps to my pass rush. So those are some things like I was just watching last year. I was like, bro, like all you have to do is turn the corner right here and just reach, and you probably would have got a sack. So just those are the things to fine tune my game.
Yeah, and I think Will's excitability sometimes can work against him because you get sack fever the closer you get to the quarterback. And there were a lot of times last year where you would see he would get within 3 yards and he just turned it into a bull rush. No matter where he was and whether he had an edge or not, he would just try to bulldoze his way through an offensive tackle. And that's what an offensive tackle wants, especially if he knows that he's going to get that. Like Laramie Tunsil will give, as long as he knows that he's got a quarterback with some poise behind him. And in the NFL, like if the guy's not getting to you and he's not getting a hand on the ball, that's a clean pocket. It can be a tightly compressed pocket, but it's clean as long as nobody actually has a chance to get to you. And Will has talked about this multiple times, but I thought a couple good plays from last year just to look at quickly were these are both sacks that he got. And this is from midway through the season, the Broncos game. And you can see here, he's actually doing a lot of what we talked about. Like right there, you're kind of at a stalemate. Russell Wilson helps him out here by being short because Russell Wilson, instead of being able to step up or anything, Russell Wilson steps back and Will sees like, oh, I got to separate here. And he does a good job of it. He's just got to do that more willingly and instinctively on his own, which is all that stuff that he's working on this year. You saw like right here, it's a good image of it, just driving. Like he could have hit that move to separate one step earlier. He can club forward through there, but he does a great job of it. He just had to learn how to do it reflexively and instinctively. You saw later in the season, he was just hitting moves like boom, working smarter, not harder. And it's very good. I've used that for a thumbnail right there. Very good shot, Will. Thank you. It's important that we keep the thumbnails going. The other part related to Will Anderson specifically was he was asked about the dynamic of playing opposite of Danielle Hunter.
Decide, I mean, that's the double-digit sack guy every year. So teams are just going to be like, shoot, we got to double this guy, so we don't know about this guy. So it's going to be fun. I think we're going to cause a lot of havoc and, disrupt a lot of stuff. So I'm excited to go to war with him.
Yeah, so the Danielle Hunter part of it, I mean, it's like this is not advanced X's and O's, right? You got a guy on the other side, and teams got to figure out the two big things. Okay, if you're going to slide your offensive line towards the dominant pass rusher, that leaves the other guy one-on-one with an offensive tackle, and it's all about getting one-on-ones in the NFL. Or they gotta keep a tight end and a running back in to block, and then the quarterback's got fewer receiving options. The interesting part with Danielle Hunter was that last year, especially, as great a year as he had, he was also on a defense that blitzed more than anybody else in the league. Brian Flores' offense was hyper aggressive when it came to sending extra pass rushers. That creates a couple things. One, lots of one-on-ones for Danielle Hunter, and two, like lots of flush quarterback opportunities. When you're throwing a hand grenade in the backfield with a blitzer, quarterback flushes. Danielle Hunter is very good at those things Will was talking about, separating, getting space, and then cleaning up some of those sacks. And I think this year, the one-on-ones have to come from that dynamic of Will Anderson on the opposite side, guys on the inside providing push. I think I wouldn't put a number on Danielle's sack number. I wouldn't put a number on Will Anderson's sack number. I do think, what was the Wade Phillips used to talk about, just if you have two guys that are double-digit sacks on opposite ends, like just the fact that you got those two guys that are menacing presences, that can go a long, long way. Best example ever was Bryce Popp got a defensive MVP one year, basically because he was playing opposite of Bruce Smith. Like Bruce Smith was the focal point of every offense. And then Bryce was a really good player, but like if he weren't playing opposite of Bruce Smith, he wasn't going to get as many sacks as he did that year to get the defensive player of the year. So either of those guys, and it might be, as Houston Stressens was talking about earlier, it could just be the luck of the draw, which one of those guys ends up with more sacks this year. The key thing is that as a unit, those two opposite each other are going to create opportunities, A, for themselves, but B, for the defensive tackles, anybody else. Like they could really feast this year. It could be really, really fun. They moved on to some other stuff, including CJ Stroud. And Will talked for a little while about CJ Stroud as a leader and when he knew that CJ was something special. But this was the particular part of it that caught my attention.
Watching him throughout the building, man, I knew he had that it factor to him. He was showing up every day, locked in, connecting with guys. I think that's the biggest thing when you know a guy's going to be really good is how they connect with their teammates. And the team just latched on to him, man, because he was so personable. And then he was just so competitive on the field. And he would get, like, angry at himself. Like, he didn't do something right. Like, he would come back and fix it. And coach would, like, show highlights of, like, when he did it wrong, and then he would come back and show another highlight when CJ did it right, and CJ just kept building and building off of that.
So I'm taking this class on this this app. It's an Imprint app. I think I'm still on my free trial, and so I'm not advertising them or anything. But it's cool because I'm taking a course. You do these courses, and it does little quizzes along the way as you're reading, like a condensed textbook version of a topic. So I'm taking this thing on interpersonal dynamics, and there's a lot in here about leadership and various things. But it really, like, one of the recurring things that keeps coming on is like the importance of trust in relationships and how hard it is to have hard conversations if you don't build trust beforehand. So whether you're a leader in a company or a leader on a sports team or just your relationship with your wife, there's got to be that trust there. And a lot of that starts with like the very thing that CJ does, which is getting to know people on a more personal level. You start off on a superficial level, you move to a more personal level. And CJ's talked about that a lot in forming a relationship with guys, him inviting guys over for dinner from every different position group throughout the year. And it's a lot easier to be a taskmaster when the person that you're correcting or that you're, maybe saying something bluntly to in the heat of the moment understands or has a connection with you already. So like you see so many young athletes think that they're the quarterback. That means I'm the leader and what I say goes. And yeah, in a perfect world, it would be just like you're in the Marines or something, but it ain't the Marines, right? You've got to establish that relationship first. I remember I did a Texas Children's Hospital event with Peyton and Eli Manning. So I got to interview those two guys up on a stage. And Peyton was talking about when he went to Denver, how despite anything else he had done in his career already, he wanted to really prove it to those guys in Denver that he should be the leader. And that he wasn't just going to go right in and start barking orders immediately and, with a big swing in, I'm Peyton Manning, donger, and think that guys would respect that. So that he went in slowly, proved that he could, at that point, proved that he could still play, which was very much in doubt. Remember, he was throwing ducks up there. He was barely throwing it all in the summer. So that part, A, establishing that personal relationship, but then B, I think the accountability and the trust that this is a guy that's hard on himself and hard on himself in a good way, but fixes things. And that builds a lot of faith. I've been on teams where you had to play a young quarterback and the guy keeps going out and making the same boneheaded mistakes week after week. And you really just start wondering, like, oh, the hell's this guy doing? Like what is he even doing? Like literally, what is he doing? And why is he the first guy out of the building after practice is over? And why is he showing up in the building 10 minutes before the meetings start? I'll leave it to all of you to speculate as to which young quarterbacks those might be. But it degrades trust or just keeps it from ever flowering to begin with. And CJ's the opposite of that. So, you can practice doing your speeches and, think you want to be a motivational leader and all that. It's just worthless if you don't establish that trust. So CJ very much gets that. The last clip we'll play was, and then I'll do some comments here, was on what he learned from his playoff experience.
Yeah, man. My honest answer is just experience, man, and being healthy and making sure that we're more detailed than ever. To me, those games really count a lot. They mean a lot more. So really just making sure that everybody's healthy, having the experience, and just being detailed on your job and making sure that, we cutting out all the mistakes and making as few mistakes as possible.
Yeah, and that's the phrase that's true that nobody wants to hear, but it's just so true. Dom Capers used to say this, but I think to an excessive degree, but he would say most games are lost than they are won in the NFL, and that it's typically the team that makes the fewest mistakes. Now it's that's nuanced too, because if you go out there with the simplest game plan ever, with the goal of just not making mistakes, you're going to get eviscerated by a good coordinator on the other side. But they're always trying to find that balancing act. It's always a balancing act with coordinators. So how complex can we get, but where guys are still playing clean and fast? And when you get to the playoffs, I mean, we've seen this with the Astros. One of the things, and one of the reasons that the Astros were able to make it to the ALCS last year, despite being a 500 team down the stretch and basically trying to give away the season at the end of the year, is that those guys get into the playoffs and they just have so much experience that all those little moments where other guys are just tightening up and either trying too hard or trying to do too much or just nervous and choking themselves, the Astros don't do that as often. So they just smother teams in the playoffs over the course of a 5 or 7 game series. And likewise, I mean, I've been on football teams where we were like back in '99, we were 14-2 in Jacksonville, but that was Coughlin 1.0 before he became the kind old grandfather in New York with the Giants. And when we were wound tight, and guys made really dumb errors in the playoffs that we weren't going to win because we folded. We folded in various playoff games. I don't worry about that with D'Amico. I think that D'Amico is the epitome of a guy that doesn't add any stress to your plate. If anything, he said it's his job to take stress off of the shoulders of young guys, especially. So as they hopefully get more playoff experience, I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I think the Texans will play free and loose in the playoffs, and hopefully if they could just block Matabike, for instance, that would be nice. That's a whole mindset or not. Let's have some guys in there that can block Matabike or Quinnen Williams or somewhere on the inside. Let's see. Lori live made it again. Before I forget, thanks for the video on the nickel coverage. Oh yeah, I'm gonna try to start doing. Especially, it's so dead right now. Thank you, Rich Eisen, for giving me something to talk about. But the NFL, like, kind of 101 educational stuff. There's a lot of questions out there that people Google because they're embarrassed to ask their husband or their wife or whomever else. I'm gonna start doing some of those during this dead time. And it's also like I did a 10-minute, 8-minute video on the nickel defense, just a very, very basic instructional guide to, like, hey, this is why it's called nickel, et cetera, et cetera. And I end up just like anybody who teaches knows, you learn a lot more even when you're trying to teach the simple stuff. I've got a kid a 12-year-old I'm going to work with in a couple days to teach him the basics of playing defensive line, and I'm terrified of it because to break something down into its most basic form, it's so difficult. I don't know if I know how to teach somebody to get in a 3-point stance, but it's kind of an important thing in football. Crazy to think for some rookie quarterbacks, it's literally their first job. Yes, Brandon. It's nuts. That's where I wish every young athlete could have, especially a really tough summer job that with a kind of a jerk of a boss that just so you understand all those things that are expected of an employee. Because especially if you're a talented college athlete, depending on which program you're in, they're not all Alabama. They're not all Ohio State. They're not all some of the SWAC schools. Those coaches are tough, but like they're not all that. Like no matter how big or small a college it is, some are really sloppily run, some are really run really well, and some guys get to the NFL and they've never had that genuine expectation of an employee. and it's kind of a culture shock to him. I cannot tell you. I won't do that. I'm not looking for cheap clicks here. I'm not going to throw. And a lot of them are good guys. Some of these young quarterbacks. Not all of them were starters. When you witness the high standard somebody has for themselves, it's easier to understand the standard they also have for you. Yes, Astros above 500. It's a big deal. It's a bigger deal than I thought I could ever enjoy out of this current Astros team, but I'm psyched about it. Well, they're the best team in June. The season starts on June 1. Isn't that an old saying somewhere, somehow? The baseball season starts June 1. You're welcome, Evan. That's promising to hear. Standing over a cornerback and getting flagged for taunting, then fumbling into the end zone. Yes. That's the Ravens, correct? Are we not? Yeah. What's your projection for Will this season? Okay, it's a good question, because if you joined late, I don't like setting specific number goals. I do think that, again, sacks are overrated if you start to look at them as like the one thing that defines whether a guy is good or not in a year, and there's some randomness to it. But the best pass rushers consistently get double-digit sacks per year. Houston Stresson's brought up Jadeveon Clowney earlier as a guy that's been productive but without double-digit sacks. That is true, and Clowney probably doesn't get as much credit as he should for just being so good against the run, but he still he lacks some things as a pass rusher. If you're genuinely one of the elite pass rushers, you're pretty consistently going to get double-digit sacks per year. So my goal for Will would be the same that he had stated, was double-digit sacks. We went through earlier, if you're joining right now, and looked at how many guys, sack leaders from recent years: Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, Danielle Hunter, Aaron Donald, even though he's an interior guy, JJ Watt, interior mostly back when he was a rookie. But so many of those guys, you go right down the line. JJ wasn't in the last 5 years, but it's a Texans podcast. I got to throw JJ into the mix. So many of those guys were single-digit sacks their first year, double-digit sacks their next year. Max Crosby was the one guy who regressed a little bit, but started off with 10 sacks. So a lot of that reflects just how technical a skill it is. And even for guys like Aaron Donald, who is pretty technically skilled his rookie year, it just takes a while to figure it out. We saw that transformation with Will from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. It's those last couple steps. It's that last 0.3 seconds before you get to the quarterback or before you get to the top of the rush that really requires refinement. And I think he's working on all the right things. And, Matt Burke said that that's really showing up, that you can see that the stuff that Daniil's been working on with Will showed up in the spring. You can tell that a little bit, even though it's no pads, because out on the edge, those pass rush drills, you can get a little bit closer to real world stuff, even though there's no shoulder pads. It's the coordination of the hands and the feet versus the offensive line and his spacing and everything. So I feel good that he'll get double-digit sacks this year. Every time I listen to a WAJ interview, I'm urged to remind the critic of us trading up for him that his leadership and maturity was a big reason for it. He'll maximize 100% of his abilities. I think that the comments he made at the end of the season, a day or two after the Baltimore Ravens loss, was probably one of the more freakishly mature things I've ever heard a rookie say, because Will basically gave a sermon on how important it is to care about every person in the building, not just the guys on the team, not just the coaches, not even just the equipment staff, but the secretaries in the front office, the people working in the ticket office, the security guards, like all those things that a lot of young guys just don't even have a grasp on, that they're just trying to take care of numero uno, which is fine. Your head is swimming as a rookie, and you do have to be more focused on yourself than you are on others. Hopefully, as you get older, just as it is in life, as you get older, you try to expand your circle outward and start to help others around you. But Will was like I took something from it. I felt like I was taking notes for my own personal life on what Will was saying. So I think it's a really good point. Do I think the addition of Ben Skoranek, will we keep another fullback on the roster? Yeah. I think the competition between Hairston and damn it, the touchdown getter there. that's the competition for starting fullback. Skoranek is used as a fullback, but kind of in a gadget manner. And I think that's his body type. You know, he's way more receiver than he is fullback or tight end. So I think that's something he's able to do. But you remember when they did it with the Rams, and it was a kind of a big news story. It was for like a 2 or 3 week period, and then the Rams pulled back on it too, because it's something you can show that perhaps the offense isn't ready for. But it's not like he's going to be a full-time fullback. Versus now when when you're in 3 wide receiver sets and the other team has nickel, 5 defensive backs on the field, like lighter personnel, that's when you can start bringing him in to be a fullback or what have you. But when they're lined up and they want to get Dameon Pierce the ball and they want to pull a guard and just run old-fashioned power or lead or anything, that's going to be an actual fullback. Beck, thank you. My God. I had to honor our forefathers and Independence Day, I'm drinking a light beer, which I'm sure would make them, if they knew light beer was a thing, they'd probably be rolling over in their graves and ask whether, was it even worth it? Was it even worth it? Well, you know, back then, they did serve like a very low alcohol ale in factories because it would keep it was like an antibiotic. So the alcohol would keep the water from being just swill, and they would drink this like gruel of a grain and low alcohol beer. So, but I can't call it light beer when they were use it to work like 12 hours a day in a very, very non-OSHA approved tannery back in the day. A lot of sacks that Clowney misses are him failing to finish. Yes. I wish there was a sack assist ratio. Yeah, the first guy to make the pressure sets up someone else for the sack. That's where I think Clowney's a good guy to bring up when it comes to where Will Anderson was still a work in progress his rookie year, was that Clowney is good at getting close to the quarterback and was better in some respects at that final finishing move, but didn't really have the bend to get to the quarterback to get that change of direction at the very end of a rush. But yeah, there's parts of Clowney that are, I mean, if you were a 15th overall pick back in the day, I think that people would have viewed him differently. I saw people talking last year like, wow, Clowney's never played like this before. Like, yeah, he did. He did for like a 3-year stretch in Houston. It's just because he was a number 1 overall pick for Houston, then the sack numbers were never going to justify that pick. Sacks do, for all of the conversation about like saying sacks don't matter, it's really, like, to put it bluntly, that's just false. They really, really matter. Like a sack is worth, I want to say it's 5 times as much on like a win probability basis than a pressure. Yeah, pressure can cause an interception or what have you, but sacks are drive killers. Sacks are just very, very valuable. It's like when you start to use them as the only thing that defines a player, that's where it's not valid. So it's somewhere in between. They totally, totally matter, just not as much as the altar that people pray to. The sack shouldn't be the one almighty thing that defines whether or not you're a good football player. And is it Canada? Oh yeah, is it Canadian Day or Canada Day? That's why they're having the early game up in Toronto, correct? Which Altuve's not playing in because Altuve has a sore toe because it was because he hit it off his toe. And even though 4 different umpires couldn't see it. And then I guess he was driving up to Toronto and got lost on the way up there, which I thought was a joke at first, but Spillane tweeted it. So there we go. I can take one more, and I want to try to keep this to less than a half hour. I'd imagine Sko is the backup X to Nico. My question would be if they'd be able to keep 7 wide receivers, if they can create a Swiss Army knife and a special teams roster spot for Skoranek. The one thing that we don't know is exactly how they're going to approach roster construction with the new kickoff return rules, because they're going to need different athletes and different body types perhaps than before on both kickoff and kickoff return. So they might end up having to keep like 1 extra special teamer. And if the versatility of Skoranek's probably going to help them out a lot there. So, okay, one more. Let's see. Thoughts on the Hall of Fame game? How can we use it as a benefit to observe the depth of our team? I think just that. I think you already said it, Evan. It's there's not going to be any starters playing for either team for the most part in that Hall of Fame game. So this, for a lot of the young guys, is going to be a really good opportunity as the preseason games have been dwindling in number and at some point will get reduced even more. This, especially with guys that you're trying to figure out whether, okay, how good are they on special teams, and then can they be a backup? That's one extra opportunity for the Texans this year. I'll look at it that way. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. Check out if you're ever curious about just the basics, like why the hell do they call it nickel, go ahead and check out that video that I did yesterday, and we'll do this again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.